You're listening to FitPro Sessions with Parallel Coaching, episode number 17. Hi, I'm Neale Bergman, and in today's podcast, I'm talking with Hayley all about supersetting, specifically agonist and antagonist supersets, and exploring paired muscles. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Neale Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FitPro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FitPro? This is the FitPro Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
Good morning, San Diego.
How to remember agonist and antagonist pair muscles and the exercises that go with them. So I've sent out an email recently asking which areas do you get a little bit more stuck on in relation to anatomy and physiology, and this question came in from George. So George, this one's for you. He was basically saying that he's doing supersets at the moment with his clients, and he is kind of just needing a little bit of fresh information on the opposing muscles. So the agonist, which is the one moving, and the antagonist, which is the opposing to that. And he was basically saying that in order to do his supersets effectively, he needs to be aware of these. So I'm just going to do a nice quick one for you all. There are basically 6 main areas you need to know about. So there's not loads to have to remember. First one I want to talk about, it happens here at the shoulder and the shoulder blade. And that is number 1 up here. We're talking horizontal flexion and extension of the shoulder. Now that sounds like a mouthful, but hold your arms out so you're in a T shape. Remember, that's the starting position for where you're in full extension. And then in that T shape, I just want you to pull your arms forward as if you're clapping your hands together or doing a pec fly. Now, when they're in that forward position, you are doing horizontal flexion of the shoulder. Now, that horizontal flexion of the shoulder happens because your pectoralis major is pulling you forward. So it's your chest muscles. It's pulling that the arm forward. It's also pulling the shoulder blades apart. Now that is flexion here. So that's your pectoralis major does that one. Now it doesn't take much for me to ask you what exercises work pec major. I'm going to put press ups in. You could put in chest press. You could put in bench press. Anything that targets the chest. Okay, then opposite to that is horizontal extension of the shoulder. Now, horizontal extension of the shoulder is going to work the opposite. So this is when your arms are going from the position that you can see this man in now and opening them out towards a T shape. And the muscles that are going to work on this, there's 2. One is the rhomboids, and then the second one is the mid-traps, so mid-trapezius. Now, these ones work together to basically close your shoulder blades. So you're going to pull your shoulder blades together, which opens up your chest. Therefore, it's the opposite to this first one, the flexion. So as that's happening, the perfect exercises for that are going to be things like seated row. So I'm going to go with a seated row machine. Now, when I'm doing a superset, I could do these 2 back to back, and I go agonist, and then I work the opposing muscle, and then the traps become the agonist for the second exercise. One gets a rest, one gets to work. Fantastic little routine. So the way to work through this is to then look at these. What other exercises have pec major in them? And then you can write those down. Which other exercises work rhomboids and mid-traps? Write all those down, and then you can pick between the 2 when you're deciding your superset. So that's my big hint for that. Now let's go over to number 2 over here. Still works around the shoulder, but this time, instead of it being going horizontally, so opening and closing of the arms, we're going to go up and down of the arms. So this is where you're starting out maybe by your hands right by your side, but you're going to lift the arm all the way up towards over the head. Now that is shoulder flexion. So shoulder flexion is lifting your arm up in front all the way up to over your head, and that happens at the shoulder joint. So shoulder flexion. Now an example of this is going to be anything that works the deltoids really. So a deltoid is your flexion is your flexion muscle, the muscle that flexes your shoulder. Now that deltoid is I'm going to put down shoulder press as a good example of that. You could also have frontal raise, you could have lateral raise. All of these are shoulder flexion. Then the opposite to this is extension. So we're going to go from having our arms in the air and we're going to pull our arms down. Now that could be in front, it could be to the side, doesn't matter either way, as long as we are reducing that space really between our arm and our waist, so that you're almost like closing it in. Now this basically works our lats, so it's our lats that are responsible for this, so our latissimus dorsi. Now I'm going to give that one a lat pull down. You could have a chin up, a pull up, that type of thing in here, straight arm pull down, anything whereby you're pulling overhead and pulling it inwards, that would work as well. So these are basically opposing exercises, they are opposite exercises. Cool, okay, so you can see where we're going with this one. Next one is the obvious one. This is your elbow flexion and extension. Everybody likes this one. They usually use it for their supersets in their assessments for level 3. So for this one, it's saying the elbow is flexing and extending. Now we know that for flexion, that's our bicep. This is the given, isn't it? This is the easy one, okay? So our bicep is flexing. Our bicep is activating during the flexion of the elbow. Now, a good exercise for that, I'm going to choose bicep curl using a cable. And then I'm going to use the extension exercise. We know is obviously the muscle associated as a tricep. Biceps and triceps go together. Then the exercise I'm going to use for this, I'm going to use skull crushers for that one. There you go. Nice and easy. Okay, right. Let's look at the next one. This one is spinal flexion and extension. So imagine you've got your spine running down through the middle here. Now, spinal flexion and extension is when, so if you're standing up straight, your spine is actually in extension at that point. So flexion is when you like do a sit-up position where you're crunching forwards and you're curling at the spine. So you're flexing your spine forwards. And then obviously it's extension when you bring it back up to standing. It's hyperextension when you take it past that point, like when a gymnast presents at the end of their maneuver. They kind of present and they go into hyperextension of the spine. So we're just going to look at flexion, extension of the spine. Flexion is going to be our abs. So that's going to be our rectus abdominis. So rectus abdominis. And then an exercise that does that, I'm going to put in a crunch. That's a nice obvious one, I know, but an ab crunch can go in there. Or a reverse crunch, I'm happy with that. But what causes extension of the spine? So I could put in here, obviously that's going to be our erector spinae. And these are on the back of our body. So if I can spell this right, erector spinae. Now these run either side of our vertebrae and they're responsible for bringing us back up to full extension of the spine. And actually in that position, they're going to be worked during a back extension. They're also worked during what else they work during? A good morning. So all of those type of exercises, and that then gives you 2 opposing exercises for that joint. Final 2 left to go. We're going to go in with hip flexion versus hip extension. This is probably a real major one that people sometimes get confused on. Really, really important. A lot of people do too much hip flexion in their life. So this guy here is standing in hip extension to start off with. So he's standing in hip extension. Now, from that position, if he was to lift his knee up or his leg up from here and stick it out level with this arrow, that would be in hip flexion. So the muscle that is responsible for that hip flexion is going to be his hip flexors. And the proper name for that is iliopsoas. So his iliopsoas is working to flex the hip. And what exercise does that? I'm going to say leg raises are a good one for that. So, when you do like a hanging leg raise, something like that. Also a full sit-up would work, but I'm gonna put a hanging leg raise. Not one I personally favour, but it's a good example for this one. Now, what would be a good one for hip extension? This is, remember, is going to take us, so we're pushing our glute, we're activating our glutes is our muscle that's being worked here. So that's the opposing muscle to the iliopsoas. And we're going to push backwards with the leg. So it's literally pushing backwards this way. Now, hip extension, a good exercise for that, you could have a hip extension machine. You could just do squats, because when you're coming back up, you've got a good amount of hip extension. What else would engage the glutes through that? Just a rear leg kick, so literally kicking your leg backwards, maybe having a band between your legs. So I'm going to put in a hip extension machine because that's a really easy one for you to understand. But you can, I favour things like squats for this. It's a little bit more functional. Then we've got the final one on here, which is our knee. Now, this is pretty easy for us to get our heads around generally, a bit like the bicep, tricep, pretty easy to understand. Now, this one is knee flexion and extension. So, the muscle that was responsible for knee flexion and flexion is obviously the closing up. So, the flexion of our knee is our hamstring. Now, as our hamstring is contracting, then our quad is relaxing. So our quad is responsible for the extension. So our quadriceps, all four of them, okay? So that's responsible for extension. Now a good exercise on here, we could go leg curl for hamstring and leg extension for quadriceps. Now, the benefit of this little video really was to just show those differences and have them as a little bit of a recap, to be honest. So the way to work through it is always work from the joint. So find the joint that's moving, work out whether you're doing flexion or extension in the concentric phase. What one is it that you're working? What's the prime mover? And what's the prime mover of that exercise? Then you can work that same joint angle and do the opposing, and then that gives you your system for your supersets as well. But remember, the main point here, the whole point of this video is just to show you that difference between the flexion and extension at the joint, and then understand all of those in relation to the muscle that's working and the exercise options that you have. So you now have tons of options to go away and do those. And George, I hope that helps and answers your question as well.
So there you have it, the full ins and outs to supersetting, agonist versus antagonistic paired muscles from Hayley. It's time now to jump into this week's Power Hour. Either join me for the first 30 minutes and do 25 minutes of structured revision and 5 minutes recap, or the full Power Hour where we go through 2 bouts of that. Here we go. Revision Power Hour. Good morning, Neale here from Parallel Coaching, and over the next 60 minutes I'm going to guide you through 2 structured revision sessions. Now you may join me for the first half and do 1 session, or do the full Power Hour, which is 2 revision sessions. Because if you're like most people that are sitting their fitness exams, their exam is in 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 12 plus weeks time. And so there's no urgency created to ever start revising right now, today. We put it off, we put it off, and we put it off until just a week or 2 before the exam, when suddenly it becomes urgent and very important before we start revising. That leads to overwhelm, confusion, frustration, and we look back and we wish, in hindsight, that we'd started sooner. So the idea of this Power Hour is to create some urgency today, create some urgency inside a 30-minute for session 1, or 60 minutes for the full 2 sessions, so that you start revising today and not leave it to the last minute. Which means you drop all of the confusion, drop all of the overwhelm, drop all of the frustration around your studies, and go at your studies by little, a little becomes a lot. So you walk into your exam fully confident, fully prepared, and knowing, not guessing, when it comes to the questions. Now, it doesn't matter if you're on a level 2, level 3, or level 4 qualification on a fitness exam. You could use this for your learner achievement pack, your coursework, your worksheets. What we're going to go through is a series of questions of planning for 5 minutes, followed by a 20-minute doing session where you're actually going to set at doing your revision, and that creates the urgency because you're going to test yourself, and you've got 7 minutes at the end to review what you've done, do a couple of short tests which you're going to set, and I'm going to show you how, and then you're going to have a 5-minute break. So that is a full 30-minute session 1, and you can repeat that twice for the full Power Hour. Now, to hold you accountable, I appreciate this is a video, but I want you to tag me in. okay, inside the student zone or below this video. Tag me in and let me know what it is that you're planning to do, what you're going to set out to. Then once you've done it, let me know that you've completed either just session 1, the full 30 minutes, or the full power hour for 60 minutes, 2 structured revision sessions. And I'd love to hold you accountable and find out, because I can ask you more questions and test you to hold that urgency so that you come back time and time again, a couple of times a week, to repeat the power hour, which means you walk into your exam in 4, 6, 8 or 12 weeks time, however long it is away, to score top marks and walk out knowing and not guessing, which means you can go on and work with clients in the future and provide them a 5-star stellar service. So I'm going to flip my screen around. I'm going to take you through the plan, do and review, where you're going to spend 5 minutes planning, 20 minutes doing, and then 7 minutes reviewing and relaxing. So I'm going to spin my screen around and I'll see you in 30 minutes time. See you later. So let's start with your plan. Set a timer on your phone for 3 minutes and we're going to answer 4 key questions. Question number 1, what specific topic will you revise in the next 20 minutes? For example, if you're on your level 3 anatomy and physiology, you might choose module 1, the heart and circulatory system. Next, question 2, what are the 3 to 5 buzzing questions you have about this topic? Grab a notepad and pen and write down your 3 to 5 questions now. Moving on to question 3, what mode of learning will you use? Is this going to be your manual? Are you going to use YouTube or the Revision Mastery Bootcamp? Are you going to jump inside the cheat sheets, or are you going to go back to previous notes? Question 4, how will you test yourself in 20 minutes time to ensure you've learned what you set out to? Is this going to be a series of mock questions? Are you going to write down 3 to 5 key points? Just know that it's key to test your knowledge on a regular basis. Next, you're going to set a timer for doing the revision for 20 minutes. So set a timer on your phone for 20 minutes and set towards answering the 4 questions from your planning. Once your 20 minutes is up, you've now got 7 minutes to review and have a break. And we're going to answer 3 questions here. Number 1 is write down 3 to 5 key notes that you've learned. Try not to overthink this. Literally write down in short bullet note form to avoid pages and pages of notes. What are the 3 to 5 key notes that you've learned from your 4 questions you set out to? Next, you're going to test your knowledge in 2 minutes and check your understanding. This could be 1 or 2 mock questions. It could literally be a review of your notes and pick out key points to test whether or not you've learned it, yes or no. Again, try not to overthink this. Finally, you're going to set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes. Now you can head over, grab a cup of tea, cup of coffee, a bite to eat, use the bathroom, or head over to Facebook and veg out for a few minutes, whatever you want to do to relax your brain before you return back and complete another 30 minutes for today's Power Hour.
Hi, I'm Neale Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FitPro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FitPro? This is the FitPro Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
Good morning, San Diego.